Hey guys. Um, don't mind my appearance. I'm just a little disheveled from the week. I had a rough week of projects, and I figured how better to end off a week than to talk about a movie I saw while I was doing one of my projects on my Netflix, and it's called Shudder. For those of you who don't know, Shudder, or the version I saw, was the 2008 remake of a Thai movie, also called Shudder, that was made in 2004. And the general premise of the film is, well, okay, in the North American one, they're newlyweds. In the Thai version, they're a couple who are coming home from a party. But I'm mainly just going to talk about the North American one because the Thai version I saw like half asleep 2 years ago with a bunch of friends. And it involved a bunch of subtitles, but I did get the general plot, and I understand, and especially the ending. I was awake for the ending, but yeah, so I'm mainly just going to talk about the North American one. But the North American one is basically newlywed couple from New York go to Japan for their honeymoon and for a photography gig that our lead male, Ben, who's played by Joshua Jackson, goes because he has a gig. And so while in Japan, they get into what seems like a car accident, and the wife, Jane, thinks that they hit a girl. But turns out, there's no girl on the road. There's nobody there that night. It was just them. So the first few days in Japan, they look at some of the photos from their honeymoon, and there's some like light streaks in their photos. They think it's a reflection or something, and that soon they find out that this is called spirit photography. And what it is it's the presence of ghosts in your photos, and that something is sending out strong emotional signals towards you. Images of the girl that was on the road that night appearing in various parts of the film, to the point where the wife Jane, she tries to confront Ben about it, but Ben doesn't want to believe it. He doesn't think it's real. He's the skeptic, and yet it's kind of weird because some of the most extreme stuff that happens in the movie, ghost wise, happens to him. And we also meet two of Ben's friends that are also in the photography world, named Adam and Bruno, I think. Both of which get killed by the ghost. One by having his eye like blown out when he's doing a photo shoot, and the other one jumps and commits suicide. After that, you start to realize that there's some weird connections going on. There's something very isolated happening, and Jane very quickly finds out that Ben knows the girl that's following them, and the girl's name is Megumi. Find out Ben was in a relationship with Megumi while he was in Japan before, but after her father passed away, she got very obsessive and very clingy, and Ben just wanted to leave her. What ends up happening is they realize that after the two guys get killed, Megumi isn't haunting them because of the car accident. She's haunting them because she killed herself before they ever got to Japan, and we know this because they get their wedding photos back, and their wedding photos have Megumi in the photos, and so they're like, no, she's been following us since before we got to Japan. So they go to Megumi's house. They find her corpse there. She committed suicide with potassium cyanide. Next day is Megumi's funeral, and so then after that, they go back to New York, and they think it's all over. She's had her funeral. In about the last 10-15 minutes of the film is where we get this final scenario, which is pretty much exactly what I remember from the Thai film, where Jane gets some photos developed of a disposable camera that Ben has, and it was from the night that they consummated their wedding vows. And in the photos, Megumi is basically doing stop motion animation, crawling in the photos towards a photo on the wall. And behind that wall, there is a sort of secret storage room where there's a trunk from Japan that belongs to Ben. And in the trunk, you find a camera. The camera has a memory card in it. It's probably the first camera in this film that I've seen that has a memory card. She puts it in the computer. She looks through the photos, and the photos are of Megumi getting sexually assaulted by Adam and Bruno. And we can only assume that, Ben is the one taking the photos because it's in his trunk. Ben comes home. She shows the photos to him. He explains that, we were only going to use this as blackmail against her. She wouldn't leave me alone, but it ended up going too far, so on and so forth. Jane is like, Megumi was trying to warn me, screw this, I can't spend the rest of my life with you, and Jane just walks out. And then very abruptly, the movie switches over to focus on Ben for about the last 4 or 5 minutes of the movie, where he just goes nuts. He's taking photos of the apartment, trying to find Megumi. Takes a bunch of photos. She's not in any of them. He throws it across the room. It takes a photo of him. He picks it up, and throughout the entire movie since the accident, Ben complains of a shoulder and neck pain. And so he goes to a doctor, and the doctors are like, there's nothing physically wrong with you. They weigh him, and he weighs like what 2 people should weigh. So they're like, something's weird, but we can't explain it. In the Polaroid, you see Megumi sitting on his shoulders, and he goes nuts, tries to electrocute himself to commit suicide, to get rid of her. But then he just ends up going into a catatonic state. We see him in a mental institution with, a reflection of a glass door swings, and you see Megumi draped over his shoulders still. And then, just movie ends. I have a couple of comments I just want to generally make about the movie. First being the dynamic of the main 2 characters, not between each other, but just who our focus is meant to be on, was a little odd. Because typically in horror films, when you focus on supernatural events on a couple, or at least a pair of people, usually there's one person who's the domineering force, who's pursuing this, who's investigating this, who's trying to figure out what's going on. That person in this movie, I would say, is Jane. She's the one that, despite the fact that there's only a handful of times that she really sees stuff and she experiences things, Ben is the one who far more experiences the crazy shit because the ghost is technically following him. So it only makes sense that, you would want the movie to focus on Ben then, but no. Throughout a majority of this film, we're following Jane. We're following her and her reactions to this stuff. Which to me was a little bit weird because the movie really should focus on Ben. For the most part, he really is just a skeptical character, and only really closely to the end does he really take any of this seriously. The fact that at the end of the movie, we get to a point where we see a digital camera, and the reason for this is because we need to very quickly realize why the ghost of Megumi would want to haunt these 3 very specific people, being Ben, Adam, and Bruno. Throughout the entire film, other than that one scene, I think there's only one other time where we see a digital camera, and the digital camera belongs to Jane. And she only uses it, I think 2 times. Once when they're on their honeymoon, and then another time when she's walking around Tokyo and she's just taking photos. Otherwise, every other camera in this film is a film camera, which, I can kind of understand because there are certain photographers that prefer working in film. They like the look of film. They prefer using it. But I can't really take this movie super seriously because you see a professional photographer using a disposable camera in the first real scene of the movie. To me, it just, I don't know anyone that uses a disposable camera anymore, let alone a professional photographer. I haven't seen someone without a basic point-and-shoot camera since about 7 years ago, when I used to work in an amusement park, and we sold disposable cameras, but they didn't sell often. Disposables just aren't used anymore, and even if you're the hipster kind of person that likes to use film photography, I highly doubt you'll go for disposable camera, because disposable camera is shit quality. Another thing that bugged me, the fact that there's no subtitles for anybody that speaks Japanese. The only subtitle we ever get in the entire film is when the doctor is talking to Ben about the neck pain. That's the only subtitle we get. Everything else is either based on your assumption of what they're saying, which, what they're saying is a lot of generic, hi, how are you, this kind of stuff, or it's stuff that can't be translated for us because then it would give away so much more information about the movie that the filmmaker doesn't want us to know yet. Specifically with the psychic. They go to see a psychic in this movie, and Ben refuses to translate what he's saying because the psychic knows what Ben did. He knows that he is pretty much directly responsible for what happened to Megumi, and Ben is just like, screw this guy. He's a fake. He's saying gibberish, whatever. But if you're a person who knows Japanese, you're gonna hear what's going on. You're gonna hear what the psychic said. It's just weird. Music, I thought, was a very emotional band-aid. I think in scenes where had there not been any music, I wouldn't have been as scared. Like there's a scene where Jane goes into the building, and she goes into the building that was in the background that has a very strong source of light over it, and so she's assuming that this is like, you know, some important room. And before she even gets to the room, the music is so intense that the music is telling me what I should be feeling. It's telling me be scared instead of just letting the movie itself build up the tension and build up that atmosphere. I felt very manipulated, and I didn't really appreciate it. Especially, oh, another thing too, more so than the music, the sound effect. There was one sound effect that keeps coming up throughout this entire movie that really bugged me. It was, you know, the very typical J horror heavy breathing sound of a woman. It's very ghostly sounding, and they use it so much in this movie, even in scenes where the ghost doesn't even appear. Like at most they're looking at the photos of the spirit photography. But like there's just no reason to have that sound effect in as many scenes as they did in this movie. It was completely pointless, it was useless, it was stupid. I'd say in comparison plot-wise to the original, it's not really that different. Like, you know, this one it's just you have an American couple that go to Japan. I do at least like the idea that they go to Japan for this instead of staying within America, because especially the Japanese culture, I think the Japanese culture just better understands or better accepts the whole idea of ghosts and spiritualism and that kind of stuff. And I think you wouldn't have seen a lot of Americans react to the situation the same way that, you know, a lot of these characters did. The very basic premise of this movie, and the reason I don't find it that scary, is the fact that this is a revenge ghost movie. This is a movie about a ghost who wants revenge on three very specific people who wronged her and is specifically haunting them. Nothing really happens with Jane. Her focus is the three guys who molested and raped her. That is the focus of this movie, and I don't really like movies where there is a focus on the jackasses getting what's coming to them, because that's the basis of most slasher flicks, is you have assholes that have it coming. Paranormal Activity, I think, does this really well, because in Paranormal Activity you had Katie and Mika, a very realistic couple in a very realized environment of their relationship, and you felt sorry for them and you felt bad when bad shit was happening to them. But it tries to play, this is what I mean by it was kind of manipulative, because for the most part you think these people are nice and innocent and don't deserve this happening to them, but by the end you find out, oh, they were jackasses, or at least the guys were. They deserved it. I don't feel sorry for them anymore. At the end of the movie, I was like, I feel great that Jane was able to just walk out on the situation. She literally just said, this has nothing to do with me. I'm gone. She literally just says, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you, and leaves. And that's it. The only person in this movie who didn't deserve being haunted isn't really being haunted. She's just kind of caught up in it. And yet, when she realizes this, she quickly makes the decision, I'm gone. I think that's the first time that's ever happened in one of these movies. But I just don't really care for movies like that. I don't like movies where this kind of situation happens. But it wasn't a hard sit. As bad as I think I've made this movie sound, there are some good aspects to it. Some of the cinematography was really good. Some of the tension building was pretty good. There were some jump scares that were pretty okay. I can't really say I'm scared to pick up my camera. Like, at least with The Ring made me afraid of televisions for like a week. This doesn't make me afraid to pick up my camera and to take pictures. I prefer horror movies where it's universal and where it could occur to anyone. It's not specific. Rotten Tomatoes gives this movie 6 or 7%, something like that, really low. I don't think I would give it a 6 or 7, but I wouldn't rate it nearly as high as the original, and the original's somewhere in the 50s. So I'd say probably it's like in the mid 40s. I'd probably give it like a 45% on Rotten Tomatoes. So yeah, I'm gone way over time. So I'll talk to you guys later.